Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. This episode is a previous recording of our live Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer series, where a live audience asks questions of professional Scrum trainers. We hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are located around the world today. Welcome to today's Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer episode. Today we have Professional Scrum Trainer Deneir here today from Belgium. My name is Lindsay Valesina with Scrum.org, and I will be your host today. So let's get into some quick items before we kick off the Q&A session. So just some really quick guidelines before we get started. Please start entering your questions into the Q&A panel. That is where we will be pulling the questions from. We ask that you please do not put your questions into the chat. We'll use the chat for any technical issues that you're having or comments that you want to make, but please enter all of your questions into the Q&A panel. That is the best place for you to put your questions, because if we do not get to your questions, we'll be able to refer to that later and share them with Stephen to answer after the webinar. So next, I would like to do a very quick intro to Scrum.org. So who is Scrum.org? We are the home of Scrum. We were founded by Ken Schwaber in 2009. He is the co-creator of Scrum. And our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems. And we offer training and certification in professional Scrum. And we also have a lot of free resources on our website, so please check those out. We are always encouraging our students and to continue their learning. And I hope this webinar today plays a part in that. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Stephen to introduce himself.
Thanks, Lindsay, for the intro. I'm living in Belgium. Today is sunny weather here. I'm already using Scrum since 2001, and I've seen quite a few things going good, but also quite a few things going bad. And I hope with that experience I can answer most of your questions. I really dedicate my professional work these days in bringing teams back to what the core of Scrum is, allowing teams to make a huge impact. And I think with a professional use of the Scrum framework, they can do that again and again, and each time faster and faster. So with that, I propose we jump into the questions.
Fantastic. Yeah. And for those of you who just joined us, please enter any questions that you have into the Q&A and keep entering them throughout as well. We will get to as many as we can on this session. And whatever we do not get to, I will share with Stephen. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay. Let's get into some questions. So this first question here. So how do we deal with people who have a negative or bad experience working with Scrum?
Yeah, that's a nice starter there. One of the key things that have been added to me in Scrum a while ago are the Scrum values. And I feel here that the value of courage is a very important one. So go and talk with these people. What is the bad experience? What is the negative experience? Was it a colleague? Was it the management? Was it a client? Was it tool, technology, whatever it was? Try to find out what that negative experience is. Have a discussion about it with the person, and preferably with the entire Scrum team, and clarify it. Scrum is based on empirical process control, the first pillar being transparency. Make that transparent. What was really negative? What was really bad? And together start improving that situation. There are a lot of people that had a bad experience. That doesn't mean that Scrum doesn't work for them. It just might have been the context, might have been their understanding. Open and transparent conversation, that is what I would go for at this moment. If there is a clear example of a bad experience, then feel free to share, and we can go into more specifics on that one probably.
Right, sounds good.
This covers the question, yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
I hope this covers the question enough for the moment.
Okay, and if it does not, feel free to ask a follow-up question. Okay, this next question. So if you're starting as a Scrum Master in a team, what are some of the activities you always like to complete? Obviously, with the view of all the teams and all individuals are different.
Yeah. Through experience, I've find out that in the areas where I join in a lot of cases, there are two main difficulties that teams are facing. And one of them is the product backlog. That's apparently for teams not an easy one. And so I'd love to do an exercise about what is the impact we're trying to make with this product, with this service that we're doing. And this is one of the activities that I feel is very valuable for teams, that they get back to why are we really building this product? What impact are we trying to make? Do we want to make in the market segment we're targeting, in the world we're targeting? That's one that I love to do. The second exercise I like to do is one with the definition of done. There are a lot of teams that I see that are struggling a lot with quality, in the sense that once in operational use, there are really big problems even coming up. And doing an exercise on what their way of working is, their process is, and what the critical steps are in their way of working, and really making them very explicit. And a definition of done is the second one that I really like to do with teams that I join. Now that's on the more, how do I say it, on the more obvious parts of the Scrum framework. But there's also an exercise I like to do it, and that's on how are we as a team. And there I like to do exercises with the Scrum values. And one that I prefer is hanging up posters around a room or a digital room, one for each value, and let people write down individually first or in pairs what they see happening in teams that show each value, and what they see happening in teams that are contradicting or even counterproductive to the values. And then have an open conversation about what we see there. This is typically an exercise that for quite some people is eye-opening in the team, and that allows them to build on the trust towards working together closer every single day. And these are things I'd love to start doing with teams I join.
Fantastic. That is great advice. So this next question, what is the difference between Scrum Masters and Agile coaches?
Yeah, that's one coming back pretty often also in classes. So where is the Agile coach in the framework? The way I look at it, and that has to do with the organizations you're in. So every organization will have different terminology for Agile coaches and definitions for them. For me, the Agile coach is a facilitator, a guide that is not explicitly using the Scrum framework. The Scrum Master is an Agile coach, which is using the Scrum framework. That to me is the only difference. Which does not mean that as Scrum Master, I will not use other frameworks. So I'd love, for example, to use Kanban. I'd love to use some principles of Lean. But my focus for me is the Scrum framework. Whereas an Agile coach will typically, I assume, take other frameworks as his or her basis. But that to me is the only difference. We should all focus on the team. We should all focus on the product and the product ownership. We should all focus on the surroundings, being management, being HR, being procurement, everybody surrounding the team. So for me, there's no real difference except for the name.
Right. And there are several stances of Scrum Master as well. And one of them is coaching. So there are a lot of different things that you can read about this. I'll drop some links into the chat as well. So the next question, what are some of your favorite specific examples of data used as a part of empiricism to make some key decisions on teams. So you want to maybe dive into some of your favorite metrics and things like that, Stephen?
Yeah. Metrics is not my key thing. So I really rely on the people there to use the data that they are having handy. The one that I really love is and I try to push the teams to make sure they have that data, is on the usage statistics. I hear a lot of people saying, yeah, our tool, our product, this and that. And when I ask, yeah, but how is it used? When is it used? By who is it used? How frequently is it used? Very often there's no clear-cut answer. If you don't have a view on how your product is being used, it's of course pretty difficult to come up with how you can improve your product. So data such as so many users are using this feature every single day 15 times is very valuable, because if in that area there is a technical issue, you want to get it solved very fast. If there is a feature that needs to be used every quarter, and it's core to the organization, even if it's not used every single day, you want to make sure you know that, so that you can address difficulties there, but also that you can promote maybe certain things. I had a client who had a great feature in their sales product. That was a sales app. And they were convinced this feature would make a big difference. Now, after a month and a half of being in production, they saw it wasn't really used. If you see that can be multiple things. So up to the sales team then to go visit clients and users and see what's happening. Why is it not being used? Is it not accessible enough? Is the user interface not enough? Didn't they even know that the feature did exist or not? So for me, usage data is really very useful in empiricism, especially with empirical information on your product. So that there can decisions be taken on, do we need to improve this feature? Do we need to remove it? Do we need to promote other features in the product backlog higher? So for me, usage data is one of the preferred data sets that I'm looking for with teams.
Sounds good. All right, this next question comes from Paul. Have you either implemented or been brought in-house to coach an existing team that was not a traditional software development project?
Yeah.
How did you go about that? Want to share some stories there?
Yeah, multiple times. The one that always come back to my mind at that moment was a mechanical engineering initiative, where we were building machines that were pulled by tractors. So that's really not comparable to software. There is some software in it, but that's a minor detail in the whole game there. The biggest challenge that we had there was to get to done. So really getting a product into a state that could be used. And even there, that took quite some time. That was a period of I was their coach for over a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And the biggest challenge there is the lead times of parts that need to be ordered. That was one thing. The other thing that was a challenge was to get the integration with a lot of other departments. There were over, my teams were 3 teams of about in total 24 people. But there were so many other departments involved, so many dependencies, so many external providers. Dependency management was a big one there for the teams that I coached. So that's a big attention point for me in these other areas. That was that one on mechanical engineering. There was another one that that keeps chasing my mind sometimes, even if we couldn't have done even more. There was a marketing initiative. Marketing is a very complex thing. How do people react to a message? How do people react to an image, to a color even? And that's not easy to figure out. So very short time frames to release, to check up, and get the data on on how do people react? How are the sales going because of another word in a message? It was a very interesting challenge to tackle. So yeah, Scrum is a great framework for everything that's complex. It's not just about software. I'm not sure what more and what specific examples the person was looking for. Then I'm happy to go more in detail about that one.
Okay, so yeah, if you want to add more context, you can drop that back into the Q&A and we'll try to get back to that one. So this next question from Pauline: should a Scrum Master be included in meetings with the product owner and developers with stakeholders when discussing projects?
Should the Scrum Master be included in meetings? Already the word meeting for me is something that I'm like, yeah, meetings. That sounds to me like everybody's on a laptop and looking at mails and hardly working together. But imagine it's really a working session. I feel that, yeah, a Scrum Master can learn a lot in these sessions, especially to see how product owners and developers, and so all the team members, are interacting with stakeholders. Because if you see as Scrum Master that the interaction with stakeholders is not going okay, then there is a great topic to discuss in a retrospective. How can we improve our relationship with the stakeholders? What type of questions can we start asking? Or should we stop asking? What kind of wording would be stronger or more powerful in our interaction with the stakeholder? So to me, a Scrum Master can learn very much by observing what's happening in these sessions. The interaction between the developers and the stakeholders, but also amongst the developers. Are they aligned to the goal of the sprint or the product? So as a Scrum Master, I really advise you to try to attend as much and as many sessions as you can to learn to get your team better so that you can support them better. I've learned a lot from these things. There was one example, there was a team. They were working in an open space, so everybody could have conversations with them. And I was standing about 15 to 20 meters away from them on the coffee machine at a given moment. And only through that observation, I noticed that two people were not so happy with each other. And that's an understatement. 2 days later, I noticed there started to be an impact on the collaboration within the team. Luckily that I noticed it up front, so I could have a chat with these people. I could ask them why they didn't bring it up in a session with everybody on a daily, that there was something wrong. So observing as Scrum Master is very important, and yeah, so please, yeah, join sessions where you can.
Okay, great. All right, this next question: how do you adopt Scrum in an organization that prefers non-negotiable contracts and fixed deadlines?
Why would we need to adopt Scrum? I'm always asking me that question. Why would we want to adopt Scrum? There's so minimal rules that I don't see we should adapt it. I understand that the fixed price contracting is not straightforward. On the other hand, what would we change? I'm asking me that question every single time that I get this one. We need to plan together. So let's plan together. We need to evaluate progress together. We need to evaluate the product together. We need to evaluate the way of working together. So these things don't change. All the events don't change. We need to gain insight in needs from the users. So refinement doesn't change. And honestly, I don't have any problem with fixed price. I'm okay with fixed price, and I'm even okay with fixed time. The only thing that is important is that the contract that is foreseen is that it allows variability in the scope in itself. So yes, they can fix the price, they can fix the time. And if the team feels that they can come up with a realistic solution and that within these constraints, everything's fine. Of course, if a requirements document, a request for proposal contains really detailed requirements like button X needs to be there in that color and with that font size, yeah, then you're into a big ride. And I even convince people I coach, don't accept that contract. It doesn't make sense. If you want to work in an agile way anyway. So no, I'd hardly adapt Scrum for that. I did adapt my client base for that, not vice versa. I hope this answered the question in a certain direction.
Okay, great. All right. So this next question, in a company working on several solutions with different clients, is it preferred for a Scrum Master to work on more than one team in different projects, or should they focus on one? Kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, I like that the Scrum value focus already comes back. I think that's a very important one. Bring focus for yourself, for your team, for your organization. So if each team has their own specific client and product to work on, that's already a big one. I think this is very important for the team themselves, that they have one focus client or focus product. That's the first remark I want to give to that one. The second one I feel important is that it depends also on how strong is that team already. Is it a starting team? Then you will probably have a very hard time to support multiple teams. Do they already have a standing relationship for years with that client, and they are used? The client also is used to working within the Scrum framework. Then your work as Scrum Master specifically on that team will be less. You might have more work with the surroundings then, making that you can then deal with multiple teams. So to me, it's not a question of preference. It's really about what's the context, how far are my teams, how far is my product owner, how good is the relation with the client. So a lot of questions to ask, and then to determine, can I really support two teams or even three? I don't know. From personal experience, I've had a client where I had at the start one initiative and it went so great and everybody was happy. And if I say everybody, it was really everybody. Client was happy, the team was happy, management was happy. So the Scrum Master, being me, was happy. They saw a success and they said, Steven, there is another initiative. So we started another initiative and we were only a month further or so. And hey, Steven, everything works well. We want you to take a second initiative. And it went okay. And then they added a third initiative. And I have to admit that for myself as Scrum Master at that moment, I was not happy with either one of the three initiatives. So it really made that I couldn't focus enough. And that was my personal feeling. And it were not big projects, honestly. It were each time about 7 to 10 people. So it's not that it's huge. But I lost my own focus. So that didn't work so well. Based on that experience, I would say don't, if you can. But look at your context.
Yep, thank you. This next question is super relevant to the world we live in today. So how do you successfully implement Scrum remotely?
Yeah, that has been indeed a big challenge also in the last years for me.
Sure. What have you been seeing teams do, and what have you been advising?
If you can, these days, the COVID is already a bit, in Belgium especially, all the numbers go down, which is good news. So if you can, I advise you to come together at least once at the beginning for a few days to get a good kickoff and get to know each other, if possible. If not possible, try to have sessions where the team really joins, all people join, have cameras on, have a good chat about how you want to work together remotely, have a good agreement on when everybody will be available for a communication, and they don't need to have the cameras on at that moment all the time, but only when there is a question coming in. So really like you would do in an office environment, that you can just pause a desk and ask a question. The camera pops up, you can have your chat is finished, cameras can go down again. So that's one thing I advise. Second thing I advise is ensure you have good collaboration tools, but really good ones. Mural, I like Mural. Miro is similar. The way that you can collaborate on these tools it's just like on a flip chart or a whiteboard. And people need to get used to that. But once you have that and you combine that with the cameras on, then you can have very good interactions. Make sure there are very clear agreements about that way of working. And these two things to me make a whole difference. I've seen people and teams who, for bandwidth purposes, were not allowed by their company to put on the cameras. That's really not good for the team spirit. I've had teams that had to use a certain tool that was not Miro or Mural. It was a catastrophe because there was no ways of good collaboration. So these two combined for me are critical. And all the rest is talk with people, have good conversations, be very open how you feel, be very attentive how your colleagues feel is also very, very, very important. Keep the communication lines open as much as you can.
Thank you. All right, this next question. I always read or hear the word facilitate. The word meaning is clear, but how is facilitating done? Small example would be great.
Yeah, and even the term facilitation in Scrum is, to me, one that a lot of people underuse. And what I mean with underuse is I see a lot of Scrum Masters saying, we facilitate a Scrum event. And that's one way of looking at facilitation. So an example of how to facilitate could be you are doing a daily Scrum, and you open with a question, or you ask a colleague to open with a question. How are we doing with progress towards the sprint goal? Will we get there, yes or no? You let it sink in a bit. And if somebody says no, then you open the conversation with what's blocking. And you can ensure that everybody has their say. Personally, I like deliberating structure to facilitate Scrum events. But that's just a very restrictive view on facilitation. The larger view to me is, how do we facilitate the team that they become more effective? That they become so effective that they produce value every single sprint. And that's a whole other story of how you facilitate these things. Maybe one example that I have, a few years back, a team of 12 people at that moment. And I was in the office, and there was one guy coming to me, Steven, you know what happened yesterday? That other colleague said this and this and that, and that's not acceptable, you know. And my question to that person was, okay, and have you talked with your colleague about it? Oh, no, that would be a big conflict. Okay. So I had a coffee with the person and made sure that he settled down a bit. A bit later, that other person came in the office and he said, Steven, you know what happened? And it was about the same story. And you heard that there was really a conflict, and an important conflict between these two people. Now, facilitation also here means facilitate the conflict, make sure the team gets out of that conflict. It was a very personal thing that happened. So what did I do? I asked both people if they were free in the afternoon. I scheduled a meeting, and I made that they talked about it. I made that they talked with each other, and they talked about the problem and not about the person anymore. That to me is also facilitating. Facilitate your team so that they become better and better. That was a big lesson for me at that moment, that it's not just about Scrum events. You also need to facilitate the people side and the collaboration very actively there. I hope this is a good enough example of what facilitation is. It's a big topic.
That's great. Thank you. This next question. is from Jimena. What's the best way to coach a team to help it estimate as a team instead of thinking on their own?
I'm not sure I caught that one correctly, Lindsay. Is it about estimation?
Yes. So what's the best way to coach a team to help it estimate as a team instead of thinking on their own tasks within their departments and areas?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There are a lot of things that with estimation that go around. What I try to do with my teams when we start is to start with relative estimates, meaning we compare items with other items to indicate a size. And we do that together. So what I did with one team was that we had about 150 items in the product backlog, which is, by the way, way too many. But anyhow, this was the situation. So I printed them out on cards, and I let people group them in high, medium, low, difficulty, effort, combination of these things. That was the first iteration. The second iteration we did was for the lows, group them in 1, 2, 3. For the mediums, group them in 5, 8, 13. So in fact, the Fibonacci sequence. And also for the highs, group them in numbers. Now they had to do that together in silence. And that was a very interesting exercise. So the whole stack was given to the first person. And the first person puts in the first requirement, the first product backlog item somewhere where he felt that was needed, and moved the stack to the next person in the circle. And like that, they saw how their colleagues estimated work, and it influenced how they saw the totality of the work. And it was a very interesting exercise. The next step was that we discussed how many we could do of a certain size in the sprints. They had 2-week sprints. They were very experienced people, by the way, in their area. And so in the afternoon, we took about 3 hours for that whole exercise. And we came to the conclusion that with all the cards on the tables and the estimates that were given in that way, so 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 together, we came out in the month, and I thought it was December something that we came out of a certain year. And they said, Stephen, you're crazy. This technique does not work. It's not possible. We will finish this in April. I was like, okay, that's strong. You do an exercise of 3 hours, and then the gut feel says you will do that in so much months less. But I said, okay, you're the engineers. You guys know what's happening and what the work is and how it will go. And I'm just new in that technology here. So yeah, you guys probably are right. Huh? The end result was that they finished in November. So it shows that an exercise as a team discussing items, because every time that there was an item that was challenged, that people said, yeah, I've put it in 7, but in 8, but it should have been in 13. Then they could have an explanation about it. Yeah, it shows that it's really very strong. And that by doing that together and facilitating in that way, by the way, this is another example of facilitation, that they come to very strong estimates, even in a short amount of time.
Awesome. Thank you. This next question, shifting gears a little bit, what do you use for motivation and team recognition to keep the team in good levels and motivated?
Yeah. I always say I cannot motivate people, and people cannot motivate me. I have to do it myself, my motivation, and people have to motivate themselves. Now, what I can do and what I try to do is to give them the environment in which they can feel motivated. What I have discovered, and again, recently I'm giving also for free training on high school students, is that motivation comes from achieving objectives. And in sprint planning, for example, make sure that the team agrees on the goal and that they agree that's really realistic. So if they then see that they have achieved it, that's really motivating for people. That's one thing I feel that's very strong. The second one that I feel is very strong is that people want to keep learning. most of the people that work in IT, that work in complex environments, that work in engineering, are pretty clever people, and they want to keep growing. And if you allow people to grow and facilitate that they grow together, yeah, that really motivates them. I have the feeling. So what I did once was, and I try to do that with other teams frequently also, is to come up with skills that people have and that people want to learn. When they then have a planning session, they see from each other what work is on the table. They know the skills each one has and the ones they want to learn, and almost automatically they join forces. These people, and that really motivates people. That really motivates people, especially also because they can decide that themselves at a certain one. So if I want to learn a certain skill and I know another colleague has that skill, and we can decide that we will work together on an item, then automatically we have taken the decision ourselves, which is something great. We can keep learning together, which is great, and we work towards a goal, which is great. And together, that setting makes that people are way more motivated than if someone else tells them what to do in a skill they already know for years and they don't grow anymore, and someone else has decided. So this is how I deal with these things in teams. Try to help people keep growing.
That's great. And that actually answered a few questions that came in on how to enable motivation and self-management. So that was really great. This next question here: what strategies can a Scrum Master use to invoke more participation in retrospectives? So how do we motivate people in that sense?
Yeah. That's again related to the facilitation question also, I feel. So when I started as Scrum Master, in the beginning, it was about what did we like this time? What do we want to change this time? What worked, what didn't work? What do I like, what didn't I like? And these questions are so high level that we are in fact inviting high level answers. This is my experience. So try to change your starting questions. One that I did recently with a team, there was quite important quality issues in the product, and so there were some production issues that came out last sprint. So instead of asking what went well, what went bad, I just asked, look, guys, we noticed that there are quite some production issues coming in. There is an inventory of these items that have happened. This is the situation. What will we do about it? This should not happen again. So what's the context? Why did it happen? What will we do about it? So the question is way more specific. These people know that there were production issues. They know which production issues there were. So make your questions more specific to the core problems that you see as Scrum Master, instead of very generic questions. That to me, makes that people are way more participative in the whole sprint retrospective. That's one thing. Another thing is you will always have people that need time to think. So I'm an introvert myself. If it's a new topic, I need to think it out a bit. Give these people time to think. Give them, for example, 2 minutes in silence. Everybody write down how you would deal with this production item, and you take a specific one. And that allows everybody to be involved. Let them write it down on Post-its so that they don't have to speak up. It's just hanging on the board, be it a digital board or a physical board, doesn't matter. But at least then you can hear, everybody can hear everybody's voice. And that does really help, to my experience in sprint retrospectives. Yeah.
Great, thanks. So there are a couple questions that kind of blend together here. So any ideas on how to help the Scrum team get a basic understanding of Agile And how do you implement Scrum with a bunch of newbies was the question. But I feel like these will have a similar answer.
Yeah. There's one thing that I started doing a while ago with new teams. I'm not talking about Scrum anymore in the beginning. I'm talking about what's the product we're trying to build. Why are we trying to build this product? And I feel that moving away from the Scrum framework in the beginning helps people to be part of the team, that they don't have to feel, hey, I don't know this framework, what can I do? No, it's not about the framework, honestly. It's about making a change, making an impact, building a product. So that's one thing I do. And then step by step, I introduce the events or the artifacts. Because once you discuss about why are we doing this product? Why are we going to make the change? What do we need to make the change? Then automatically you have the first view of your product backlog. And then you can introduce that concept saying, okay, look, the exercise we've just done, why is your product goal for the moment probably, or your product vision? What will we do to get to that vision and to that goal? Yeah, these are the high-level product backlog items. So, hey guys, congratulations, you've created the product backlog version 1. So I try to do that with all the concepts of Scrum, in fact. It's not important to do a sprint retrospective. It's important to have a chat with your team on which topic you want to improve, how you will improve, agree actions to improve, and then, hey team, congratulations, you've just done a sprint retrospective. And this is the way I try to introduce these concepts to my new teams, instead of going through all the theory that a lot of people don't want to hear. They really want to do their job, and we are there to help them do their job better. So I try to let them do their job and then introduce Scrum, the concept, step by step.
Okay, great. Why do people say it's difficult to master Scrum? Why?
Yeah, I will give my personal experience with that. So in my introduction, I said I was using Scrum, the framework, since 2001, with quite a few hurdles. And after a while, I felt like, yeah, this feels good. I'm helping my teams with the events. I'm helping my teams with the artifacts. And at a certain moment, I got into contact with someone, and he said, Steven, I'm giving training X. I'd love that you do the Professional Scrum Master and Product Owner training. What do you think? I said, yeah, I want to try that. That's a good idea. So I filed my request to Scrum.org. I had a good chat with Daphne. And she said, yeah, you can continue to the next step. Let's subscribe for the trainer session. That was what year were we? 2018, something like that. So I had about 17, 18 years of experience with Scrum at that moment. I entered that training, and it was with Stephanie Ackerman, and we'll never forget that first morning. And it was the first 2 hours of the session, and she was only doing the introduction. I was like, damn, Steven, what am I doing here? I already learned this, I learned that, I learned something else, I learned something more. And we're just in the introduction part. How can I even continue a trainer? I finished the process in 4 months, and I was accepted. So why is it so difficult? There's so many views on it, so many experience, so many insights, every time I learn new things. The question on data here, it triggered me, so I will go search for data. You can count on that. And it continues like that. Every single time I have a chat with a team, there's new stuff to learn. The framework is just a few rules, and every context allows you to find out new things within the rules. It's so strong. Yeah, it keeps amazing me. It keeps triggering me. So yes, I'm professional Scrum trainer. Do I master Scrum? Yeah, apparently to a level. Do I learn things every day?
Yeah, that is a great answer. And it is a framework, and you can fold in complementary practices in the Scrum as well. And there's a question here. Will you advise one to learn Kanban and use it with your team? So do you want to talk a little bit about using Scrum with Kanban?
Yeah. I feel that Kanban at a certain moment in my career also shedded some light for my teams. So do I advise it to teams? It depends. I first feel with the team what are the biggest improvements they can make, and step by step we see how to improve. So Scrum with Kanban to me is very great for a few things, and the first one that I love in Kanban is the explicit mentioning of visibility. So you want to have a team board, a Kanban board, whatever the term you're using, to make your flow transparent and very visible. Now, for a lot of people, it stops there, but it doesn't. It's only the starting point, that board. What's very important to me is that the flow is managed, which is another concept of Kanban, by the way. And managing the flow really means, is this the most optimal flow we have? So in retrospectives or at other moments, you have an evaluation on your flow and see where you can improve it. That's one thing about it. The other thing is that you manage your flow by using work in process limits in order to make sure that you don't have items that hang there and that start stacking up. I really like that part also, especially in teams that start and there are still silos in the organizations. You might have testers, and then they have all the work at the end, and they have a whole pile of stuff to test. So you don't want that. You want that everybody starts testing, or most people anyway. You also have a look at flow. How are items flowing through our process? I also love that one. You want to have a look at the lead times. Something is entering my sprint backlog. How long does it take before it finishes? Something is entering the product backlog. How much time does it take for us to learn? There are so many interesting things with Scrum, with Kanban, the combination of both. That it's a really strong approach. The thing is that you need to see with your teams what is realistic to implement. So the visualization, for sure, that's a straightforward and easy one. The metrics, I would say, start step by step with the flow metrics. That will certainly help. So it's context dependent. Would I say try it? Yeah, try it. See if it fits, and then adapt again. So be very open with your team that it is an experiment you want to do. Certainly have a look at the Scrum with Kanban guide on the Scrum.org website. There's a lot of information on that, on where to focus on, what metrics you can use. Again, context depending.
Okay, great, thank you. This next question, we'll switch gears a little bit to product ownership. So Mallory says, we have product owners who feel too busy in their routine day job to really put adequate effort toward being a good product owner. And this shows in our product backlogs. What do you advise we could do to get more impactful engagement from our POs who have very little time to give us?
What would a routine day job be for a PO? That's a very interesting statement there. A routine day job. For me, product owner does not have a routine day job. Apparently, what I understand, and please, Mallory, correct me if I'm wrong there. I understand this person is doing something else on top of PO, or it's probably the reverse, that the PO role is on top of other work. This is what I'm assuming. It probably indeed shows in the product backlog. My advice would be, and any product owner, the main accountability for me, well, the Scrum Guide is explicit on that. It's maximize value. But in order to get there, the biggest job for a product owner is to interact with stakeholders, with the market, with users. That's not a routine day job. Not at all. So maybe Mallory, if you can clarify what the routine day job is, then I might see if I can give other advice. It's a bit difficult for me at this moment without more context.
Okay, I will be on the lookout for Mallory's clarification, and if not, we can follow up with her later.
Definitely.
Okay, so here's another motivation-focused question. How do you engage and motivate a team that has a never-ending backlog or products they are delivering, such as a support team?
Yeah. As long as the product exists, the product backlog exists, right? So it is never ending until your product dies. From that part, that's one thing. But the most difficult part I have with this one is a support team. I have a client at this moment that has a 3-team. No, they reshuffled the teams to 2 teams, and within each of the teams there are 2-3 people who are doing first and second line support. Why did they do that? Because a single support team, they are not owning the products. So it's very difficult for these people to make a big impact. On the other hand, the people then who develop the solution, that's also not as powerful as it could be. If a person is doing the development and doing the support, that person understands the questions coming in. That person understands how the product is built. So that person can more easily answer the questions on the one hand. On the other hand, can also immediately or faster find solutions for the problems that are in the support calls. A support team itself, to me, is a red flag when it comes to a Scrum team. So I would expect that my Scrum team is doing the support. Now, how can you motivate these people? Have them other things to do than only support. Have them involved in setting goals. Have them involved in the overall team. Have them involved in the product goal and the product vision. Allow them to grow their skills in other areas. So indeed, as you mentioned, Lindsay, it's also about motivation. So the same is coming back. Give them clear goals. Let them align on the goals. Let them grow as persons in their learning and their skills and their experience. And give them some more decision power and not just answering calls or doing the support that nobody else wants to do. So this is, to me, for a Scrum Master, a job to open the eyes of the organization that there is some reorganization to do.
All right, perfect. Thank you. That's good advice there. So we are pretty much at our time. Any closing words you want to leave us with, Stephen?
I think for me, please, everybody who's here, that means you have a heart for Scrum, you're interested in Scrum. Make your challenges transparent with your team, discuss openly with them. And the strongest solution for every challenge you will deal with has a very simple solution. It's called ask the team. And together you will figure it out.
Fantastic. That is great advice. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on the live session, and also those who are listening to us in the podcast version of this. And thank you, Stephen, so much for your time. Audience, please feel free to check out our other webcasts on our website at Scrum.org/webcasts. And also please connect with Stephen. Stephen, how can people get in touch with you?
On LinkedIn, you can easily find me, Steven Deneir. I'm open to your questions. You can reach me on email through steven@boostyourscrum.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. And Scrum on.